My guest this week is Susan Gordon, journalist, books editor, and ghostwriter. She's fascinated by characters and stories and made it her life's work to document these in writing. Her life has had its twists and turns. The daughter of Australian parents, she came to the UK when she was 5. After leaving school, she decided university wasn't for her and instead worked on shop floors across Hampshire selling mobile phones. But by the time she was 21, a change was needed and became a trainee accountant. This led her to spend the next 10 years in management and finance. Although weekends and evenings included musical theatre and many hours in a certain Basingstoke library, it was drama classes on a Saturday afternoon which sparked something. Impressed by another student's knowledge of plays and theatre, she dedicated a summer to reading every play she could get her hands on. Her work in the last 5 years includes playwriting for London stages, 2 short films, and a scripted podcast series, alongside countless ghostwriting and book projects. She says, "When I ask questions about someone's life, it's because I am really interested. A client recently described me as like a reporter, but a kind one. And with that in mind, everything I do makes sense. If something is not written down, it is eventually lost. And that's what makes the written word so vital in our lives." So, Susan Gordon, thank you so much for being a guest on my podcast today.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
So, Susan, I always like to give a little bit of background for my listeners on my guest. So I just wondered if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit of back history and tell us how it all sort of started, or where Susan comes from.
Oh, it's difficult to sort of identify like any particular point, because I sort of feel like I've sort of lived like 3 separate lives already. So it's because that career is so, it has such an impact on your identity, I think, and how you see yourself. I think generally your parents have a big influence on how you see the world. And then after that, it's really just the people you encounter, you know. So yeah. So I'd probably start with my parents, and in terms of, you know, like who I am, and then after that, then it's sort of the places that I've been and people I've been, you know, fortunate to work with or not so fortunate.
Because I mentioned, didn't I, in the introduction, that you started off, you were 5 years old, you came to the UK from Australia with your parents. And I wondered, I mean, I know 5 is a very young age, but I wondered if how much of an influence that had on you, and also that transition and then settling down in the UK.
Yeah, so it's true that I don't have many memories from, I was born in Tasmania, Australia. I don't have many memories from that time. I think what did impact on me was today what we would call, there's a phrase like othering, and that's what I saw not happen to me, but it did sort of happen to my mum and dad. So to just give you an example, and this is sort of fairly common, you know, but they would have been in this country for like 10 years, 20 years even, and they would get questions like, or have you been back, or are you going back, and this kind of thing, which you know, you can brush this stuff off, but it's sort of like another way of reading it. If you're, I mean, it might just be because they were interested, you know, and or they imagined a new life, you know, on the other side of the world. In fact, that probably was the reason. But it's easy to hear it as saying, "Oh, you're not from here," or "You're not like." And so, you know, that it's given me an empathy, I think, for people who have the immigrant experience, even though, you know, I fit in pretty much anywhere I go. Like I pretty much see everybody looks the same as me. But seeing my parents be this constant distinction made just because their voice was slightly different.
Well, before we come on to you selling mobile phones, I'm just going to do this bit because I just wonder as well, you made that decision not to go to university. I'm quite intrigued on what your reason is. You made that decision because I speak to quite a few people, and from experience as well. Sometimes people they're not encouraged, but also sometimes it makes them hungry, and you learn more later on in life, particularly when you become a business person. And then there's numerous very successful people running their own business who actually didn't go into university academic forward their education, if it's like. So anyway, I'd be intrigued to know what your thoughts were.
So I always hate that question on forms that you see sometimes, which is, did your parents go to university? Well, my parents did go to university and I didn't. And that's not a sort of reflection of my sort of class. I was very clear about my reasons at the time. This was the time of New Labour. So the mantra is education, education, education. Very much, it was at my sixth form. I remember they did like basically promotional stuff around their students being selected for Oxbridge. And my grades were okay. I definitely would have got into somewhere like Reading University, but I wouldn't have got into Oxford or Cambridge. So then you haven't. So there wasn't that to sort of aim for. I did not enjoy a sixth form at all. So the prospect of another 3 years and to pay for the the thing about tuition fees is they weren't so high as they are now, but there is an opportunity cost if you're basically stuck on a full-time course. And an opportunity cost for anyone who's not an accountant or has that sort of background is what you missed out on earning, and because you're sort of committed elsewhere. So I did want to have the cash in my hand. I thought that was kind of more certain. And the other thing is, at that time, I never thought to myself, oh, this means I can't study, or this means this, because already, I mean, my dad was an accountant and I sort of knew that I could study it. So I always kind of thought, well, I'll do that later. I'll do it when it's convenient. Right. And when I say later, I didn't think like 25. I just kind of thought, well, 3 years from now makes sense. And at the meantime, because I was probably like, I wanted the sales experience as well. Like I was probably shy because I didn't have a good time at sixth form, and that's, if you don't have a good time, you're probably going to be shy. But I was never shy on a shop floor, So for me, like, working was great. It's like, why would you want to do this? Like, and I know it's like, obviously, first 1 or 2 years of work, but I remember, like, you'd have your base location for stores in terms of which store you're attached to, but I traveled around all different stores in Hampshire, depending on basically to fill, like, if they were short of staff, because the company I worked for, they routinely had a quite small team staffing any store, and stores could be very busy. So I remember setting out from, I think it was, I was still in Farnborough at the time for the Isle of Wight, and that was just for one day, So I took the hovercraft over there, and at that age, like, I know it sounds silly, but at that age, it's like an adventure, because you don't take the hovercraft to work every day.
You do if you live on it. That's where I originate from.
Okay, really? Did you grow up on the hovercraft?
I obviously didn't tell you that because it didn't come up before. But yes, I was born and lived on the Isle of Wight. So I travelled off the Isle of Wight on a hovercraft and a ferry virtually all my life. So it's only in the last 3 years that I do it now, but going the other way.
Okay. Yeah, I've worked with people who are the same. They commuted by sort of hovercraft. So and I've holidayed on the Isle of Wight as well. So I actually kind of know it pretty well.
So that choice then. So yeah, I mean, you obviously, I like the fact that you've already been talking about working on a shop floor, and actually the learnings it sounds like that you got from it and the experience. So was that a conscious decision, or did that job come up and you thought, right, I want to make some money, I'm going to go for that?
Well, I was applying for pretty much any job going, so I didn't, but at the time, and particularly because I wasn't thinking, that I was going to train as a plumber or something like that. So in reality, the type of jobs that you can do is probably either going to be sort of clerical work in an office, or it's going to be sort of shop based. So there was, it was at a time, I think I saw the ad in a paper, so in my local paper, so that was gives you an idea how so far back. And I went on to the interview, and I can still remember the guy's expression as they've interviewed me. So but it was, I guess, if at that time with only A levels and 18 years old, it's almost inevitable it's going to be sort of shop work. But and I understand that people who've never done shop work don't realize that it's hard, and they think that it's easy. Customer service is easy to do for 20 minutes. It's not easy to do for 8 or 10 hours, because it's the same. It's delivering that consistency of experience. And now, even though I do a very different job, customer service is not something that can be neglected. You always think, well, how does the customer feel? And it doesn't mean that that you waving a magic wand to give them everything that they want, but it does mean that that they should have a good experience with you, that they are respected, and that there's responding to people on a timely basis, and just these basic things.
So then we're going to get on. We're slowly coming towards you and your sort of journalistic and ghostwriting, where you are now, really. So in between the day job, you like to go to the theatre, and I like the way you kind of said to me, and there was spending a bit of time in a certain library in Basingstoke. Slightly intrigues me. So I hope you're going to enlighten me a bit on that, which kind of makes me think, and I hope you don't mind this, but it made me think, well, that's quite, someone you imagine to be quite quiet. It's like quiet type. And then you go, oh, but it was the Saturday afternoon drama classes that kind of really, kind of lit something inside of you, or sparked something that eventually got you writing. So could you just kind of talk us through I'd like to know about the library thing, and how you then got into drama classes?
Well, I mentioned the library just because it was part of my routine. I don't know if it's still called that, but it had been rebranded a few years ago as the Basingstoke Discovery Centre, but it was always the same library. It's significant because I used to go pretty much every sort of Saturday after having done a gym class. I'd have a wander around, and I'd just pick up what was on the shelves. And I didn't know that they were like sort of classic novels, or that these were sort of journalists at the Spectator, or whatever it was. I would just pick up the book I think was interesting and start reading it. And so that over the years, that was actually served as a sort of foundation in terms of like basically English literature. And because that's the thing, you just got to read those books. You've got to know what stories are, and you have to know, you should know what you're interested in, what do you respond to, so I always enjoyed reading like stories, autobiography and memoir, and from like barristers and QCs, that's what I like reading about. And I liked the classic books, but I didn't always like the sort of new fiction. So that was that. You're right in terms of I don't really I was a keen runner as well, which is also quite a sort of solitary thing. When I was in those drama classes, I think I was very conscious that this was the sort of first time, because they'd have games to get you all warmed up, of like where we'd be sort of running around fun. This is the first time I was in a kind of group environment that was safe, because obviously it's not sort of a corporate environment with people quite different from myself. And I was very conscious of of that this was different from what my previous experiences had been. That said, I knew at that point, when I was in the drama classes, I was doing lots of different classes. I was doing some history classes, a short film course, which was on a weekend. The drama one, it sort of marks, that was a transition time for me where I was confident, but I didn't know what exactly I would be doing next. And and I can still remember the names of the people in the course, and we had a Facebook group and everything like that. And we went out to mark the end of the course. We went to see what was the importance of being earnest in the West End. So we did have a sense of belonging as a sort of group. I was interested. One of my I can remember I was interested. I wasn't thinking that I was going to become an actor, certainly, but I was interested in what the actors' processes were, like how did they look at a script, So like, and what sort of questions would they ask? And the guy who ran the course, he was trained at the Welsh School of Royal Welsh College of Drama, I think it is, and he was a trained actor, and just being able to hear them switch their voice, and when he changed his voice and he became like this different person, like it was so convincing. I was like, oh, he could be a spy because like he seems to transform. So I found that interesting.
Yeah.
But I didn't think, oh, I'm going to be an actor. So it was just kind of just learning a bit more about entertainment, I guess.
And then I was just because I am looking at my notes. Anyone watching, anyone listening, of course, just thinks she's just gone a bit quiet, so that's fine. And then I liked this. You had a summer of reading endless plays. Now, must have been plays there that you were reading that you necessarily chosen, I'm presuming, or back to what you just said,
Yeah, so it's worth saying. So I did this. It was like a one-day course, and it was acting again or drama, and I was people were choosing plays and roles that they would like that they would use as an audition piece, and there was this girl there, and she was doing a much better job than the tutor was of assigning characters to the people in the class. And she was like, and she said to me, and she said the name of the play, and she'd be like, I can't remember the character's name, I'll just say it's Chloe for the sake of it, you'd be great Chloe. And I thought this was, and she had not only did she know all these plays, but she had seen them as well. And I thought this was miraculous. And that impressed me. And I think it's worth saying that sometimes you have a moment when you're impressed by something, it actually proves to be pivotal in terms of your sort of overall direction. That summer, I have a book. It's on my shelf here somewhere. I wonder if I can see it quickly. So that under the pressure of the moment, I don't think I can. But in the back of the book, it's like a sort of playwright's handbook, and in the back of the book, it was like essential reading, and it just had lists basically of the plays. So I would just order them almost at random off, online, and just read them. And I still, the ones that I really liked, I've kept, so they're behind me. And and because I think I'll come back to them. And I guess it was a whole summer of doing that really, and just hoping that I would absorb some of the brilliance that I sometimes saw on the page.
Well, you obviously did. You obviously absolutely did. So was that the moment then, we're going to get to it now, that you thought, this is what I want to do? I love this. You kind of want to go away from the numbers and actually go to words.
I do remember saying I'm going to be a writer. And I sort of, for a time, I kind of regretted saying that as well, because everything took a lot longer than I thought it would. But there was a point where I just thought, I remember a recruitment consultant calling me about this sort of accountancy role, and I just said, that's not what I'm doing anymore. And that was it. So that was in the summer. It was because now I know that feeling. I should have recognized at the time. It's when you're looking at job listings and you feel absolutely no joy about what you're seeing. And I was just sort of accepting that, for a long time. So, but it was a conscious decision, which eventually turned into action in terms of, I decided to train as a journalist, because that's a sort of good way of basically monetizing quite quickly, an ability to write, and it was great training as well. So I went along to, it was a 6-month fast track course, and then you seek out placements in newsrooms as well, because as soon as you say, like, I'm on this course, they'll usually, they can usually help and give you a little space, and you don't get sort of paid, but it's really great experience to be on the other side.
So you set up Frances Hardy Productions, is that right?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
I wanted to quote something that you have on your website about it, because I thought it would be quite good to get you to explain this. So you say that very much Frances Hardy Productions is about embracing new technology and ways of reaching audiences to produce creatively daring and high quality work. Innovation, not noise. I love that. I really like that. So I just wondered if you could just, give us a little insight into Frances Hardy Productions and also what you mean by that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So when I started working as a journalist, if I'm honest, probably about half of my sort of energy and thoughts really went towards producing and writing, and that's what sort of Frances Hardy Productions is about. Now, I should stress that it is just me, so these are quite sort of small things, but they are, they're small but significant in my. It does, and that includes like a scripted podcast series. What I mean by embracing new technology is a lot of writers do shy away from technology. It's something they feel uncomfortable with. I don't, and if so I'm interested in like new camera technology. That's I'm not interested in the names, but if it's good quality, that's what I'm interested in. And the same with like podcasting. I was doing in sort of late 2018, early 19, and in the UK, podcasting, the uptake hasn't been like it is in the US. So I don't have a snobbery about mediums. Like, I think podcasting is like rock and roll, because you can.
Good.
Because you have so much freedom. So that's what I mean by embracing new technology. It's basically not having a snobbery about the different mediums and about the technology that you use. And then when I say and ways of reaching audiences the same, to produce creatively daring and high quality work. What I mean by that is there's something that is all very quickly split creatives is basically where do they sit in terms of, in the simplest terms, you can just say basically lowbrow, middlebrow, and highbrow, or middlebrow or mainstream. And I'm a mainstream like producer and writer, sometimes edging a little bit up, but not likely to edge down to lowbrow. And that's what I mean by so creatively daring. Creatively daring just means that you're not going to be making like reality TV, or it's you're sort of interested in going viral. You're actually more committed to the craft and to creating things that you're happy with. That's what that's sort of getting at. I do take risks, as a creative. I'm always open to trying something new. Rather than just saying, well, this is how we do it and this is how it's been done before. And innovation, not noise. Again, I'm very much committed to doing a smaller volume of high quality work rather than a large volume of low quality. Because with your sort of volume and quality, something's got to give. Like, you can't really do a high volume of high quality work in terms of, if you're talking about things like podcasting, like if you were in, like for your podcast, if you were trying to record 8 shows a week, what's going to happen? So that's what that's sort of getting at. It's really about sort of taste and aspirations.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for explaining that. I mean, that's really great, and I really just love that description. So that's brilliant. Now, the really key thing is, and I know when we had our chat, you were talking about ghostwriting, and it really kind of opened my mind. I think a lot of people out there, their perception of ghostwriting is basically someone else writes somebody else's book and they sign it or they put their name to it. But you were explaining that it's not like that at all necessarily. So I know ghostwriting is something you do. So please enlighten us.
It's something I started doing. I had a sort of basic awareness of what it was, which probably matches yours at the beginning. And I got in touch with a company which is called Story Terrace. They've done a lot of the media and sort of marketing in the last couple of years, so that they are basically still a startup. It was 5 or 6 years old, and it was through them that I had my first sort of client experience as a ghostwriter. And so really, the thing about sort of ghostwriting is it's something I wouldn't normally suggest it outright to somebody, because what if they're passionate about writing their book? That would I obviously don't want to discourage them. But if you don't have time to sit down and write, it's a lot faster to speak to somebody. And that's the ghostwriter is taking down what they're saying. And if you're a good talker, it's likely to be a good book, because it's all based on the interviews, and the interview time is extensive. It's really, I can't do anything without it as well. So it's definitely conducting quality interviews is important as a ghostwriter, and capturing their voice, because I find that a lot of people are highly articulate when they speak, but when they turn to the page, something changes, and so it's sort of capturing that for them, and that's what sort of ghostwriting. It's definitely sort of, I've only ever been on sort of non-fiction projects as a ghostwriter. Some are fiction ghostwriters, which is more like what I think you're sort of thinking of, where you have sometimes a big name, say like a fiction crime writer, is expected to churn out quite a high number of books every year. So then they get other writers behind the scenes writing those books. And that's not what I'm doing, because it's purely about the client. It's purely nonfiction, and it's usually memoir and autobiography. And I've done a little bit of sort of subject-oriented work as well, where they sort of relay their expertise to me, and then I'm putting that into form. So I've done that sort of for coaches, for IT managers, basically at quite a senior level, where they've got like 25 years work experience behind them. Obviously, then they've got my sort of knowledge and experience as well, in terms of shaping a narrative. And I'll run those interviews, and then that's sort of good promotional material for them. It sort of they're able to tell people what they can do, just by saying, read my book. And not as in a demanding way like that. The other thing, which brings me onto my sort of another early point that I would make about ghostwriting, is most people do think of this sort of chunky books that you see like in Waterstones. Well, that's like 70,000 words, and to be honest, few people have the sort of time or inclination to actually produce a 70k book. So when I talk about books, they can be handbook size, only like 10,000 words. That really does it still serves the business. And the nice thing about a small book like that is it's not a big ask to say, this is my story, would you be interested in reading it? Because it won't take them long. It's like a very slim book. And and also for just on a basic level, in terms of budgeting, if you've got a small book, it's not expensive.
So I'm just intrigued. Can you give me, and I know this is not a question I've written down, but can you tell me roughly how long does it take for you to work with someone to write a book with them? I mean, I know it's going to be an approximation because I'm sure they're all individual, but how much time do I normally allow for something like that?
It's a great question. So to have a sense of somebody in total, I would really need at least in total 6 hours interview time. I wouldn't work with less than that. And it'd be nice to have 10 in total. Now you think about scheduling interview time, I wouldn't recommend that someone run more than 1 or 2 interviews a week, and usually probably only say like an hour. So they should, in terms of the interview time, you should probably allow somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks to sort of run that out. And then I'll go away and start writing or produce a sample which needs to be reviewed. And then once I've produced the full manuscript, that also needs to be reviewed by a client. And that review process, I mean, I've had short samples returned to me within a few hours to be later to say, okay, it's ready, it's good, you're ready to keep going, keep writing. But that process can take a lot longer in terms of approval of sample or full manuscripts. So I would say, in terms of, for a small project, if you're planning to have a book project and you're thinking, well, I want it by this to be ready for the public, by this date, you should have decided which writer you're working with probably 3 to 4 months beforehand.
Oh, interesting, yeah. And I guess, I mean, I've kind of been slightly involved over the years with different projects on different things. There have been a couple of books, but and also, I guess if you're writing, as you say, it's a factual book, or it's training, or education in some form, of course, you've got imagery and graphics and everything else that to throw into the mix, as well as the actual copy itself, haven't you?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And,
yeah,
and the all important front cover, of course, or dust.
Yeah, it's definitely the cover art's all important. You always can't underestimate how important it is. It's because it's the first impression. And if that's not professionally done, then why would anyone expect the rest of it to be? So yeah, a good graphic designer, don't do it yourself unless you are a designer.
Yes, I'm quite excited. A very great friend of mine who's also been a podcast guest, actually, she's writing the book at the moment, and we've already got the front cover and the title. So obviously she's working with publishers to do this. So we've already got that. Now she's got to just write the copy. Anyway, we don't need the content. So, Susan, I'd like to ask you, being out there on your own and running your own sort of production company and being a sort of freelance writer and everything, I'd like to know, could you just share with us some of the highs and maybe some of the lows? And I just wondered if you might have any on the highs, any like little snippety stories you could tell us, but more from a business perspective, because I think, people, it's just nice to know that we're all in it together here, and it's not always, celebrating successes.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, absolutely. So for me, the highs. So I can remember a couple of points last year. It was really, I take the client feedback seriously, but to have the positive feedback from editors that I've worked with as well, because they're sort of an interface, and between the sort of client and me, if it's that sort of project. So to have their sort of good opinion was, that sort of was really significant for me. In terms of other sort of high points, I guess it's just having this sort of freedom. It's having sort of freedom with my time and what the sort of future might be. So it's not having a sense of like being sort of chained to a desk, or that someone owns you for 8 hours a day. That's I measure my time differently, and I feel differently about myself. So that's definitely the high points of being freelance. The lowest points is unfortunately it's always around sort of invoicing. So late paid invoices, or that's sort of tricky.
Yeah.
Unfortunately at that it does, if there's a problem with getting an invoice paid, it sort of colors the whole experience. So that's the sort of I'm just trying to think of the other kind of low points. The only thing I'd point out for anybody listening, and particularly if you've got a creative role, is just to look out for short periods of burnout. I've had quite a few. I can probably think of three or four, and it might last sort of 5-6 years, and it might only be sort of 2 weeks. I think 2, 3, 4 weeks, and it's just usually at the end of projects, and I've always been like that, where I can work intensely for a short period of time. The things to look out for is really like your sort of enthusiasm about the work, and how ready are you, sort of procrastinating sort of unduly, that kind of thing. But every time, like, either it's been pointed out to me or I've highlighted it, and I think if you're just honest and then just admit that you're going to need a little bit of time, like it might be a week, it might be sort of 2 weeks of just not doing very much and basically doing nothing, and that sort of sees you through. So, but that wasn't just a feature. That's not just a feature of freelance, though. I do remember a few occasions, in the sort of corporate world as well, where sort of burnout, that you'll be able to hear a cat in the background.
We can.
And where burnout has affected me, and it's a horrible feeling, because it's I definitely never had like sort of negative thoughts or anything like that, but when your work is really important to you and you're not enthusiastic about it, like it's a kind of it's something to look out for and just be honest about. But I can definitely. So my last work, I would say in December, even, because I think we nearly had like 2 years at that point. It's nearly 2 years in the pandemic, and it went on a lot longer than we expected. So
yeah, totally. And I think you're absolutely right. I think it's really, in the last few years, it's really, showcased that we all need to be very aware of our mental health and to take time out. Our physical health is much to do with our mental health. It's all joined. We regularly think we need to be careful with what we eat or exercise, but actually it's the same about taking time to say, this is my time for my mental well-being and my physical well-being. So I think you're absolutely right.
Yes, because you can be burnt out like in one of those ways or both.
Yeah.
So I can remember a time where like I was physically fine, like I was in the gym and I had like the weights at home and everything, but mentally I was had enough. And then other times where your mind is pretty good, but physically, and people who have like health problems and that they would, something, I think that's something they very much identify with, where mentally they're fine, but the body's just not doing what you want it to.
I know. But I think you're absolutely right. We are so much more aware of that now, and whatever capacity you work in, be it for yourself running a business or you're right in the corporate world, we do need to take time and just think about ourselves, be kind to ourselves and, look after ourselves, which brings me on to my question. So talking about that, but what do you do? I mean, you've mentioned that you do the gym or you used to go running. So just like to get a little idea of what you do to chill out. And you're probably going to tell me you read or something.
Well, it's not necessarily, because when it's your job, you sort of, it's something like an editor said to me, so when I met her towards the end of last year, that when editing very well and then you go to read a sort of fiction, because I did briefly look at fiction editing, I was like, is this something I want to do? And she said it sort of spoils it, and she was right, because instead of just looking at a page of like in a novel and enjoying it, now I was taking apart the sentences and going, what's where is this in the present tense, and and when does the tense change, and things like that. So I'm not a big reader at all. I am a big non-fiction reader. I love autobiography, always have. I love memoir as well, so that definitely, and subject-oriented stuff I love. Anything sort of popular science, I'm there. I do like, in terms of the, I wouldn't say necessarily trashy, but I do like YouTube. There's a few YouTubers, like I guess you would call them vloggers. So there's probably 3 or 4 I can think of where I enjoy their videos when they come out. That's a good way to relax. And yeah, I enjoy films as well, so, and actually doing this, that's the one thing that I'm grateful for, actually, that as a scriptwriter, it's never taken away my enjoyment. Doing that script writing for theatre has never taken away my enjoyment of TV or film. It's only ever enhanced it. It's only made me appreciate, if something's good, then I really appreciate it. So yeah, TV and film, and probably a bit more film than TV, I would say.
Oh God, I was going to really put you on the spot and say, go on then, who's your favourite actor, or what's your favourite play you've ever seen?
Oh, it's difficult to pick a sort of favourite play. I mean, it's I wouldn't say that there was a favourite, because they're all so different. And in terms of actors, I know when I don't get on with them, and luckily that doesn't, sometimes, some actors, some you just go, I wouldn't, they don't sort of appeal to me, but most of the time I just like them all. And I like watching actor interviews as well. And, I even read Will Smith's autobiography before Christmas. So yeah, I like actors generally. And, but yeah, I'm never one, I don't like those, where they sort of rank films and they sort of rank books, because I'm like, but how can you say this is better than that? And something that you didn't appreciate when you were 20, you might love when you're 35. Yeah,
it's true. It's really true. Absolutely. I've been very lucky enough to go behind the scenes at BAFTA a few times and meet a few people. And I met Tom Hiddleston. I've met many great people and great actors, but I'm going to tell you this story because I had watched him live play Coriolanus. And I was just so struck by the whole thing. I mean, the whole cast were amazing. And but he was just so amazing in it. And it was just something I'd not expected to see him in. And I always remember when I went to go and meet him, the first thing I said was, I absolutely loved your Coriolanus. And he started laughing. And I said, I said, it sounds slightly weird, but I said, but I was just so taken by it. And obviously he's done many great things. And but yeah, so that's just one thing that really just stuck in my mind. You know, I think sometimes you can watch a play and somebody, you know, great actors, but someone can just play it in such a way that you are completely taken by it, and you just can't forget it. Anyway, there's been a few of those. I've been very lucky, but
you were so fortunate to meet. I'm jealous, I'm very sort of jealous, but also grateful, because I don't know, what if I would blurt out something really stupid? I probably would. And then it would become, instead of being the brightest moment of my life, it would be this darkest moment of shame where I blurted out that stupid thing to unfortunately with him, and he seems to have this absolutely lovely demeanor.
He does. Yeah, no, he does. And he was there on behalf of BAFTA and actually bringing through young people. There's a lot of work they do with young people through schools and things and through their academy. And I've been to a few things. And so he's very passionate in supporting that, which is great. So we are nearly at the end, Susan. But before we do get there, would you just like to share with our listeners how people could get in contact with you, or how they can find you, please?
Yes, of course. So your best bet is to head over to LinkedIn and send me a connect request. I'm happy to sort of chat on the platform as well. The sort of messaging service there is great. So if you head over to LinkedIn and do search for my full name there, so that's Susan Gordon Byron, so it's Byron, and you'll be described as writing an editorial, and it's got my picture as well, so you'll definitely get the right Susan. And yeah, it'd be really great to hear from anybody who's got any sort of questions about sort of book editing or thinking about getting a project underway. I'm usually, or pretty much always, very happy to have a chat with anyone who sort of wants a basic introduction to how it all works.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Now, what is on the horizon for you, Susan? What about, your production company or book ghostwriting? Can you share any of that with us?
Yes, I can say a little bit. I can say that generally at the moment I feel pretty excited about sort of 2022 and then 23 as well. So I've been working on a short film script for a little while with a director I just absolutely love working with. He's so generous and kind with his time and very thoughtful with his sort of comments. And I think for a writer, you do need a sort of director at some point. And so he's got my short film script, and we'll be meeting. And by the way, that's like the third or fourth version as well. So hopefully we'll be meeting some point in this spring to talk about that. I'd love to see that made at some point as well, and that obviously depends on having a sort of budget and all those things. So that's a sort of short film, definitely a short film, and a great one that was the festival circuit. That's an ambition of mine for the next sort of 1 to 2 years. I'm also about 1/3 through a fiction novel, which I'm aiming, which I want to have traditionally published this one, because I've independently published before anyway. So I know that process, but that's about it's contemporary times, but it's all about sort of technology, and I can't really say any more than that, but it's quite exciting. And I held off writing a novel for a very long time, but then finally something happened on 1st of January, and I thought, well, I'm going to start. So already that's a third of it done. In terms of career, I just look forward to working with people I like and respect. And so, yeah, just more of that. That's all.
Oh, well, how exciting. That does sound really, really exciting. Promise me that you'll keep me posted on all of that, won't you? And I can't wait to see your short film or read the book, I have to say. So my last question is, which I always like to ask all my guests, is what one piece of advice would you share with someone either thinking about going and doing what you do, or at least maybe making a change in their life or their career?
Yes, it's for writing, it's pretty specific. I would say definitely sort of depending on what sort of writer you want to be, it's really about sort of testing your material. And so if you don't have any experience as a writer, don't sort of go out saying, you know, you're going to write people's books and things. You know, test your material and your sort of acumen, and whether that's, you know, new writing nights as a scriptwriter or as a sort of journalist in newsrooms and for magazines. You know, or small projects as a, you know, you might want to start out as a blogger. All those things, start small and build up, is probably the best, my sort of single piece of advice for a writer. For making a change, I think as soon as you know that you need to make a change, then you've already, you know, sort of way. And what I've found is that people are generally pretty good with their time. So I'm not saying that you sort of contact random strangers and say, can I have half an hour with you, or can I have a coffee with you? But be selective about sort of people you're interested in and that you're excited by and like what they're doing, and see if you can just meet them or watch videos of them talking, because I think or interview them, so meet people that you'd like to be like. And you know, that's what I'd say, and that will help hone what your ambitions are. You know.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. That's good. 2 pieces of advice there. And that is it. I'm going to now let you go. But thank you so much, Susan. Susan Gordon, everyone. Thank you so much for being a guest on my With Tracy podcast. It's been absolutely lovely. You are my first writer and ghostwriter, which is wonderful. And you'll be part of my series 4, which is, you know, all about my female sort of entrepreneurs or women in business. So thank you so much. It's been brilliant.
It's been lovely to be here. Thank you so much for having me on the show.